Honor, we ask the defendant be released on bond.
Ms. Chase?
People oppose bail. We filed notice to seek the death penalty, Your Honor.
This man isn't going anywhere, Miss Turley. Bail is denied.
I'm very sorry. I'll be down to you in an hour. Okay? Annabeth.
Hannah.
I hope your office isn't playing to the cheap seats.
Bob Peters gunned down 2 attorneys on the steps of this very courthouse. The whole system, every attorney, judge, and clerk will want to see him receive the maximum punishment. We'll have plenty of support for the death penalty.
Or a jury could decide that what my client did, if not justified, was certainly understandable.
Understandable?
They'll put themselves in his shoes, a grieving father, screwed by the system. Stop bluffing. Your office is overreaching. Now give me a plea offer I can take back to my client. Voluntary manslaughter.
No plea.
Annabeth.
We are not posturing. We intend to pursue the death penalty to the end.
Well, maybe you'll change your mind when you read our expert psych evaluation as to Mr. Peters' state of mind at the time of the shootings.
If you're mounting some sort of affirmative defense, we're entitled to have our own expert evaluate him, too.
The sooner the better.
According to police, Peters' car was parked over there.
A reporter who followed him from the courtroom told police Peters went to his car, removed something from the glove compartment, put it in his pocket.
The murder weapon, as it turns out.
Did he come straight to the courthouse?
Reporter said he stood by his car about 10 minutes.
Plenty of time to think about the crime.
Hellman and Jaffe started their press conference. Peters came up and commenced firing.
How soon was that after the verdict?
Half hour, give or take. Verdict was read at 9:17 a.m. Shooting occurred at 9:51.
That's good for us. To get the death penalty in this case, not only do we have to prove Peters intended on killing Jaffe, but that he lay in wait to do so.
It's about as cold-blooded as it gets. Only problem is he couldn't aim.
Have you read the psych workup?
I did.
Our expert's opinion, the stress of the moment, his judgment was impaired. This does not rise to the level of murder, Annabeth, much less the death penalty.
Let's see what Dr. Perrin has to say.
Her name was Barbara Sue Peters. And yes, David Hopkins killed her. Of course he did. No doubt in my mind.
A jury saw it differently.
That's because these lawyers can say anything they want. Twist the facts around until the son of a bitch seems like Prince Charming.
Tell me more about what happened after you heard the verdict. How you felt.
I saw David Hopkins hug his 2 lawyers, and that was it. I went to the car and got the gun and waited for him to come out.
How long did you wait?
Till I saw him. I don't know how long it was.
What were you thinking as you waited?
About Barbara. How much I loved and missed her. And how Hopkins was just gonna walk away from this whole thing. Somebody had to make him pay.
How did you feel about Mr. Hellman and Miss Jaffe?
I hated them for getting Hopkins off. For twisting my words and lying to the jury about Barbara.
Did you think about shooting them too?
No. My hands were shaking, and I already told you I was aiming at Hopkins.
But after the first shot, you fired 2 more times. Why?
David Hopkins was still alive, and I wanted him dead for what he did to my little girl.
What happened next?
That lady lawyer fell. I couldn't believe it. It was a terrible, terrible mistake, and I wish I could take it back. I'm sorry. And I wish to God I could take it back.
He is genuinely remorseful about what he did.
Genuinely sorry he didn't kill David Hopkins. It's still murder.
Manslaughter, sudden heat upon hearing the not guilty verdict.
Sudden heat? He bought the gun 3 weeks before the shooting and brought it to the courthouse for the express purpose of killing David Hopkins.
He's going to be very good on the stand. And the reasons he picked up the gun might strike a chord with some people.
Yeah, so might the fact that he knew exactly what he was doing. He intended to kill David Hopkins.
I had no idea Bob was going to do that. My husband is not a violent man.
Did he ever say what he would do if Hopkins was acquitted?
We didn't talk much about the trial. We just tried to get through it. We thought that with all the evidence, David was bound to be convicted. And Mr. Marinelli kept telling us what a strong case he had. And then every day we sat and watched while that lawyer, Mr. Hellman, punched holes in it.
How did your husband react to that, watching the case go south?
The night before the verdict, he had a drink. 20 years sober, down the tubes. You know, he blamed himself for this whole thing. He worked with David. He introduced him to Barbara at a company picnic. She was our only child. And that man took her from us.
Motion to access case files in State of Indiana versus David Hopkins. Motion to depose John Marinelli. You want to depose the prosecutor in the Hopkins case and his work products?
Files, notes, everything relating to the case.
Mr. Marinelli's work product is not discoverable.
It is if a judge says it is. The Hopkins case is at the heart of my defense.
The only thing that matters in the Hopkins case is the verdict. That was your client's motive for murder.
The prosecutor's constant assurances to Bob and Maxine Peters that Hopkins would be convicted is certainly relevant. It laid the foundation for what subsequently happened.
How this office tried the Hopkins case is not at issue here.
It is now. The prosecutor gave Bob Peters unreasonable hope about the verdict, and the acquittal traumatized Bob Peters not because he's a violent man, but because John Marinelli misled him.
Misled him how, exactly?
I need the work product to answer that.
Okay, let me get this straight. Even though Peters pulled the trigger, Marinelli and our office are responsible for Doug Hellman being shot and Kelly Jaffe dying.
You know what? You could distort my argument any way you want. Let's see what a judge says.
Turley wants to put this office on trial?
She's claiming Marinelli mishandled the case and misled Mr. and Mrs. Peters.
Misled.
Gave them false hope, assured them Hopkins would be convicted, and when he wasn't...
Marinelli's conduct caused Bob Peters sudden heat, which is a mitigating factor and obviates the death penalty.
That's what caused Peters to fire his weapon into a crowd? Not that his daughter's killer was acquitted? I don't think a jury will find that very persuasive.
On the surface, it's a kind of provocation argument. Gives Turley a way to ask for manslaughter instead of murder and back us off the death penalty.
Pretty thin. Assuming Marinelli told me the truth, I don't think we have anything to worry about.
I've known John a long time. He's always been straight with me.
Get his files on the Hopkins case. Make sure we have no surprises. This office has nothing to hide.
Besides Marinelli's horrible handwriting, I don't see anything out of the ordinary.
Looks like the evidence against Hopkins was strong. Hopkins said Barbara fell while they were hiking. Autopsy reports show there were bruises on her back and arms that indicate she was thrown from the cliff. And Hopkins' timeline does